Thank you. It's been I'm so sorry that I'm late for this press conference. I just had a lot of phone calls, and some of those were different political parties, and of course the Government of Canada, different ministers, and just got off the phone moments ago with the Prime Minister as well. So I'm here I want to thank you I want to thank the Algonquin territory on whose lands we are on. I want to thank each of you for being here today. To our First Nations people, miigwech, miigwech, miigwech. For those of you that don't know me, I was the regional chief for Manitoba. I've been the lead negotiator on child welfare. I'm now, I also worked for, former national chiefs in the past, and I grew up on a First Nation community in Manitoba. It was called the Penamutang First Nation, and I went to school there, and those are where my people are where we come from. We're Anishinaabe people, and very strong people, and our languages are always very important to us, and our good way of living. We always had. That's why I know that we have a lot of issues that we have to deal with in this country. And my first job, of course, is I also want to thank the chiefs of this country for your confidence in me. I'll be there every day to make sure to walk with you and to assist you in your issues, whether they're big or whether they're small, that your community matters, that First Nations matter, that First Nations people matter. My first job is to bring unity to the Assembly of First Nations and First Nations from coast to coast to coast. We have to be unified. I want to thank David Pratt for walking into the Assembly with me this morning as a show of support and unity, as well as Interim National Chief Joanna Bernard. It's so important that we unite more than ever. We're facing many crises in this country, and our people are facing the highest poverty levels in this country, yet we're the fastest growing demographic. And so we have a lot of work to do, and I just, I look to the Assembly of First Nations as that needs to be a strong voice to amplify the voices of First Nations once again, and to make sure that we're not left out of tables, and that the provinces, the territories, the federal and provincial governments, that you make space for our people at the table. The top-down approach from governments in this country needs to stop, and if we're going to truly work towards reconciliation, we need to be united. We need to make sure that we're working together for progress and for closing gaps. I know that there's been commitments to close the gap to 2030 on infrastructure and housing. That's my first order of business today, is to make sure that we get resources out to our communities. I want to, I guess just a little bit on my background. My grandfather, Chief Richard Woodhouse, signed Treaty Number 2 in 1871. I know that earlier today I had the original treaty medal, and that's always where we come from. We have inherent rights in this country, and this entire land is Indian land. All of Canada is Indian land, and at the same time, they have to realize that they have inherent treaty partners here, inherent partners here from coast to coast to coast, and we need to work together for better outcomes for all of us. And when First Nations win, everybody wins. So with that, I look forward to getting to know all of you through the years ahead, and working with each and every one of you as we talk through these issues to make a better Canada. And I want to thank the press as well for always being balanced and always trying to do their job in a good way. So thank you. Miigwech. I'll take your questions now. Yeah.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's Christy Kirkup from the Globe and Mail over here.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this, National Chief. You mentioned that you were on the phone with the Prime Minister. Can you tell us what are some of the things that you talked about in your first exchange as National Chief with the Prime Minister, and what are the top issues that you will be pushing the federal government on in your capacity?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we need housing, like I said, and more importantly, we have to make sure that roads are built underneath, and that we have infrastructure and water and all those things that maybe Canadians take for granted. First Nations need those proper investments, and we've had a commitment to close the gap to 2030. So I'd like to hold their feet to the fire to get those gaps closed. in a good way, though, in a respectful way. We had a very good conversation, and we also talked about policing as an essential service, that we have to get that moving. We talked about economic development and making sure that First Nations people are no longer left out of this out of the economy of this country. We need to be working more closely together. That's what partners and allies are supposed to do. So, thank you.
And just as a follow-up, I know you mentioned the negotiations on child welfare, and of course you played the lead negotiating role for the AFN. What are some of the lessons that you take away from that process that you will perhaps be drawing on in your capacity as National Chief?
Well, if people don't listen, I'm going to go higher, right? I'm going to move up I'm going to go to the highest levels if I have to make sure that our people are heard, to make sure that we get results for First Nations people.
Hello, National Chief. It's Brett Forrester here with CBC Indigenous. Some of the delegates I spoke to in the room, particularly those who were supporting Dean Sayers, Sheila North, and Vice Chief Pratt, were concerned that the AFN is sometimes seen as being a little bit too close to the federal government, and wanted to see the AFN take a stronger stance in defense of First Nations rights. What do you say to those chiefs in those communities who want to see the AFN take a more adversarial approach with the federal government?
Hey, look, in the past, I've worked for chiefs, and like I said I don't know if you were here yesterday, but I spoke about Chief Francis Flett, where we had to stick up for fishermen, and we had to lock the doors on Indian Affairs in order to give us, on the federal government, and lock some of the, because we needed to get action on that. And I remember back then watching him, and we walked out of there with a commitment to work on fishing for our fishermen. So I get that sometimes that's needed. But at the same time, there's also a time to try and work through these things. I think we are at a time right now where we're trying to work through some of these hard issues, and our people expect that of us. And yes, we have to sometimes kick down doors, or sometimes we have to do what we have to do to get our people recognized. But at the same time, I think that in this moment, I'm coming in here as a fresh start to try and say, let's work through some of these issues together. And I hope that the governments are there, the federal governments, and I hope that Canadians are there to help us as well, to be supportive and to be allies to our people. Because, we're on a long road of a relationship building, and we're just starting to talk about reconciliation. We haven't talked about it before. This is a new word from a few years ago. So if we're really going to work on reconciliation, let's start. And let's work through these things together.
And as a follow-up, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding was that you had secured roughly 50% support by the end of the 6th ballot, so still shy of the 60% needed to win under the charter. How satisfied are you with the strength of the mandate you've been given from the chiefs, and how satisfied are you with the turnout from the chiefs?
Well, I certainly think no election, I think that for the Assembly of First Nations does a lot better. Even the national elections, we have a lot, we have more of our people. I know some people federally, I think 40 or 50% of Canadians vote. In this election, we had, 70% of our people vote. We had a high number of our leadership vote from across the country. Is it a perfect system? Absolutely not. Do we have to make changes? Absolutely, we have to do a review of that. And this has happened time and time again from different elections. We see some of the shortfalls in all of that, and we have to look at that and review that and take options back to our chiefs, because I think that we could do better. Yeah.
I'm going to sneak a third one in on behalf of my parliamentary colleagues in Ottawa. They'd like to know if you will support Ontario chiefs who are in court challenging the carbon tax.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's going to hurt our people. I've got to, of course, go to our specialists. I've got to go to the Assembly of First Nations staff and ask them to do a thorough analysis on that. But from what I'm hearing, it's going to hurt our people, and we should have a proper legal strategy on that, as well as a political lens on it. How does that affect First Nations people? So I think we could talk about that down the road, and I ask for a little bit of time for me to look through that and get a thorough briefing on that issue. Thank you.
Hi, National Chief. Alessia Pasipimi here from the Globe and Mail, the Canadian press. There was talk earlier downstairs that you and Pratt had come to a deal for his concession, and there was talk that that included child welfare. What other elements are included in that?
Well, Chief Pratt and I talked this morning. We had a long talk last night, actually, and this morning on child welfare. As you know, child welfare is a very tough issue for First Nations. And I know that in Saskatchewan, they have a very different model compared to other parts of this country. And I respect Saskatchewan, and I respect the chiefs there and their way of doing things on child welfare. I know that different regions do things differently. But listen, that's a 150-year-old model that we've all inherited from residential schools to day schools to the 60 scoop and now to, unfortunately, the child welfare system. I come from a province, though, where we have 10,000 kids in care right now as we speak. And many of them may not even be connected to our communities. They may not even know that they're First Nations yet. They know they may be different. But we have them in all these different homes, and many of them are not, they're not First Nations homes. And so I'm sure that there's many kids there waiting for us to change the system, and there's mothers there waiting to get their children back, and many times it's because of poverty. There's just a very small minority of them that should be in care. The rest should be at home with their families, thriving and living in our communities and learning our languages and having a good life and being strong enough to stand here today. If I didn't have the love of my community, the love of my parents, the love of my grandmother, of an entire community, and knowing my language and where I come from, I couldn't stand here and run for an election in front of you right now because I would be broken and beat down. But if we give our kids back to our people and give First Nations the driving force to bring our children home, we've kept ourselves for thousands of years. And since time immemorial, since Creator put us here, we can do it again.
So just to clarify, is child welfare the only aspect of the deal that was reached with Pratt?
I think it was a deal, but it was, certainly it was, let's work together on child welfare. And we do have long-term reform, as you know. There's 19.8 billion sitting there that we do need to try and work through. I do need to work with Chief Pratt and many other chiefs across this country to try and fix, we need to work together to try and fix that system. It's, like I said, it's a broken system, and I know that Saskatchewan, Chief Pratt always stresses that they're different, they have a different system when it comes to child welfare than other places. And we totally respect that, but I have to respect also the other chiefs in other regions that may have a different view on trying to fix the child welfare system, but we have to find a way to come together and make, at least a base to get moving on this sensitive issue and to work towards better outcomes instead of the high outcomes that we see every day. More and more kids are being taken into care every day, and that has to stop. The bleeding has to stop.
And just my follow-up question, a major theme that we're hearing from chiefs is about Bill C-53, the Métis Self-Governance Agreements. Interim National Chief Joanna Bernard called for the entire bill to be withdrawn a few days ago. What is the next step of the AFN to challenge this legislation that's currently in the House?
Well, certainly, we will have we're going to have to, our chiefs are going to have to come together, but we also do have to have a discussion about it. We need to have a strong strategy to the Senate. I'm looking forward to talking to the senators of this country, that they come to us in a good way and we talk that through. Because I'm not here to talk about other Indigenous groups' rights or no rights, but I am here to talk about First Nations rights. And we need of course I need a few days to be properly briefed, but at the same time I look forward to talking to the Senate that don't pass flawed bills that affect First Nations people and First Nations rights.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Congratulations, National Chief.
Thank you.
I'm Shale Simler. I'm with Canada's National Observer.
Thank you.
First question. So the AFN released its climate action plan a few months ago. I'm just wondering how you will lead the AFN through this implementation of the climate action plan, particularly as there's competing interests and demands of chiefs, whether it's those in participating in resource development or in opposition, and in some cases during the same project.
Well, I'm happy that there's a climate action plan, but as a chief that was in Manitoba, and I know Grand Chiefs, our first woman Grand Chiefs here from Manitoba, Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is joining me here, thank you. I don't think we've heard about that, though. I think First Nations need to be more included in that. Like, I don't know, Grand Chief, if they've talked to you about that climate action plan, but First Nations need to be, we're here, this is our land, we've been always told that we're stewards of the land. Well, then respect us in a good way and let's work through that. I would also like a few days to get an analysis on that, and First Nations are always the first one to feel the effects of climate change over and over again. And we have, of course, Peguis Chief here, they just have a massive flood just months ago. That's climate change, and it happens time and time again. Yeah.
So this is actually the AFN's climate action plan. I know you got some people down on the ground at COP.
Pardon?
Yeah, I know it's the AFN's action plan. I know there was a little bit, not too much detail in terms of how that will be implemented.
Okay, I thought you were talking something else. Sorry, I got confused on that, but yeah.
Okay, I just
The
wanted to...
AFN's action plan, I haven't read it yet. I look forward to meeting the staff. I look forward to reading it through thoroughly. I haven't read it.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I wanted to kind of do a follow-up on this carbon tax question. Obviously, I've talked to some chiefs around here about the exorbitant price of diesel and gas, especially in the north, upwards to $4 a liter. Obviously, the Liberal government made concessions to Atlantic Canada around oil. Can you just speak a little bit to what you see when there's some exemptions made for some parts of the country and yet northern chiefs are still struggling?
Well, there's many communities that are still on diesel. They're not even on the grid and we need to make sure that we put investments into green energy for those communities and find better ways to power them instead of leaving them on grids. And they've been asking for this for a long time. So again, I ask for a few days to get briefed up properly on that issue, and we'll talk again. I'm sure I'll see you weekly.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jérôme Gilcouture with Radio-Canada. You talk a lot about the fact that the AFN is the Chiefs Assembly from coast to coast to coast. I've been here in the whole election process, and I haven't heard any talk, any words in French, and the AFN is supposed to be bilingual. What do you make of that? Do you think that, I know that a lot of the Quebec chiefs feel that it is less their assembly than the rest of Canada.
Oh, absolutely. And I did speak to the Quebec chiefs. I did translate my own, and I commit that to them, that everything's translated, as well as with Indigenous languages and our First Nations languages. I know that we have a lot of work to do on translation, including French and First Nations languages. However, with the Quebec chiefs, I know that there's a disconnect, and I've talked to them about that. We have a plan in place to try and work more closely together. And I did speak broken French to them, and I tried my best, but I wrote it out, and I spoke to them in French in a good way, in a respectful way. And I look forward to continuing to get to know the Quebec chiefs, even if we have language barriers, and there's people in my office that will be bilingual and that will help me, so that they don't feel that disconnect. I do feel that too with them, and I always respect my colleagues in Quebec, the Quebec First Nations. Yeah.
Do you have a little bit of precision about the action plan for that, or is it too soon?
It's too soon. Give me a moment.
It's okay, I understand. And my follow-up question would be, in the past few years, we heard that a lot of critiques about the AFN, the fact that it was becoming less and less relevant. What is your plan to make sure that it is the most efficient organization it can be as a lobbying organization as well as a political one?
Well, certainly, I don't want a big band office. I want a strong political advocacy office for our chiefs to make sure that their voices are heard in Ottawa and around the country. And that's all that we can do, is to make sure that we're trying to help First Nations when they need assistance, to try and help them on day-to-day issues, that they don't feel left alone in their communities, that they have a national chief. The chiefs can call a national chief and say, help us, assist us with this. And I'm not going to say that I'm going to solve everything in 3.5 years. That's unrealistic. But I am here to try every single day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Chief Woodhouse. My name is Joyce Spear Chief Morris. I'm with the Toronto Star. There was a lot of discussion in the past couple of days, especially with candidates as they conceded, and the talk about unity and the need to be unified within the AFN. we all know the AFN has had a lot of divisiveness in the past couple of years, and that divisiveness is showing within Indigenous politics across the country with different issues and different bills and politics going on. Just wondering what your plan is to actually address those issues and how you plan on actually tackling unity proactively within the AFN.
I think if we work on the issues together, we shouldn't have time to bicker. There's too many people suffering out there. There's people on the streets. There's people with First Nations that have many issues. And if we focus on our people, and especially, I ran on a children's agenda on young children. I look at all of our children and our grandchildren. They need to have I'm the first, I went to day school. The kids after many of us in this room, they're the first ones to go to school without being in a residential school or day school just now. That's the first generation after me. I'm 40 years old. So we have a young growing population. They're going to be stronger than us, but they expect us right now to get to work and to be at work every single day and to work together and to try and get results and make this country more equitable for them. And we're not asking for anything more than what Canadians want, but we do want equality. We do want access to clean drinking water, a safe home, security in our homes, good jobs, businesses. We want all those things. We want good lives for our children, good, happy, healthy lives for our children and for our families. And I know that we've just come through this dark, dark period where we are still seeing that cloud that's still there. And I know that by ceremony, by prayers, by working together, by trying to find a new way, I think that we can overcome some of those challenges. And do things need to be changed at the Assembly of First Nations? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a perfect organization. We have we've come a long way. I talked to former National Chief Phil Fontaine last week and a few weeks ago, and I said, have we seen progress? And he says, oh, absolutely. And he was National Chief for a long time. And then I see, we have, everybody brings something to the national office, and some of it's good, and some of it maybe we have to relook at that.
So just to clarify on that, in order to, kind of tackle this idea of unity, is your action plan kind of to be addressing kind of the structure of AFN within, or is it to be more of a social aspect on with getting chiefs back in?
No, I think that, I haven't met with my staff yet, with the Assembly of First Nations. They're wonderful people, but my role is to try and bring them together and to make sure that we're working for First Nations every day, as they do. But I think, we may structure that in a different way. I have some ideas, and I'm sure we'll see them down the road. Yeah.
Thank you. And my second question is, in your first address, you mentioned, that Canada can't just take from Indigenous lands and take our money, and you were speaking about, the upcoming federal budget in the spring. I'm just wondering, do you have a plan for how you mean to go about economic reconciliation before the budget, or how do you plan to work with the government before the budget comes out?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm going to make sure that we have a budget submission, and that every minister gets a copy, and that every MP in this country gets a copy. And I call upon our MPs to support us in that. I call upon the Minister of Finance and all the government officials to take a serious look at that, because there's a growing gap in this country, and they know it. And we have to try and work together. We also we just have lots of issues to work on, and so I'll be talking to you weekly, I'm sure, and we have lots of these things to iron out, but I know that we need to work more closely together.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Thank you, everybody. Again,
Thank you.
thank you, National Chief.
Thank you.